Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be doing my February reading wrap-up. So I'm going to go through all the books that I read in February. Last month I did this a little bit differently. I did it in my reading journal, but I'm going to split those videos up this month because it was very chaotic and no one watched it. So I'm still going to do a reading journal because I enjoy doing my reading journal, but I'm not going to include my full reviews in that video anymore. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with the DNF because I did DNF one book. This was a rollover from January. This is Collide by Bel Cabra. I just did not give two shits about these characters, I'm going to be honest. I read 274 pages of this and there was no depth to the characters, in my opinion. I can see why this isn't one of the popular hockey romances because it's like not very... It's fine. I ended up rating it on Goodreads. I usually don't rate DNFs, but I did read a good portion of this book. So I rated it 2 stars, and that's just, I had to give something because I read a lot of this. There's like 383 pages on it, in it, and I read 274. So I read almost, I'd say like 66% of the book. The characters were just underwhelming and I just didn't care about them at all. So I DNF'd it. I could have easily finished it, but I just was like, I'm not enjoying it. I'd rather read something else. Done with this. So let's now go into the books that I actually did read. I read 6 books, which is kind of my goal is to read 72 books this year, which would be 6 per month. So let's get started with those ones that I did finish. 5 of them are actually from my physical TBR. The 6th book that was on my TBR was A Man Called Ove, and I'm currently reading that right now. It's on my nightstand. I don't know if you guys can see it. But yeah, it's on my nightstand. I am not very far in because I'm also reading Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands, and that one's just, it's more fun. So I'm reading both of those right now, but I do generally read more than one book at once. Okay, the first book that I finished was The Things They Carried by Tam O'Brien. This is a classic. I don't know if it's considered like a modern classic, so it was published in 1992, but it is about men in the Vietnam War. And it was really interesting. It was really well written. I gave it 4.5 stars, I think. It just didn't have that like 5-star feeling for me, maybe because I couldn't relate to it as much, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I thought it was a really good book, and it really made me think about war differently, And this book was also referenced in another book that I read later in the month, which I thought was really interesting because that one had a war veteran in it. But I did, looks like I did do something. Okay. Oh, I thought this was really relatable for now, even though this was written 30 years ago, almost, or maybe more. Oh my God. Yep. It was written over 30 years ago. Tell them how much I detested. Okay. At night when I couldn't sleep, I'd sometimes carry on fierce arguments with those people. I'd be screaming at them, telling them how much I detested their blind, thoughtless, automatic acquiescence to it all, their subliminal patriotism, their prideful ignorance, their love it or leave it platitudes, how they were sending me off to a fight in a war they didn't understand and didn't want to understand. So yeah, that's like, Vietnam War was very contested at the time. There was a lot of protests about it and stuff. And people were like burning their draft cards and like that kind of thing was happening. So like he went through a hard time, obviously, because he was in the Vietnam War, came back full and whole, which a lot of people did not, and actually came back. This author actually did go to the Vietnam War. This is not a true story. I think some of it, like, that's kind of like a thing throughout the novel. He's like, this is a true story. Oh, but that's not true. Oh, but that's not true. So it's not a true story, but I think it's probably emulates what actually happened to him over there. So I highly recommend this, especially if you have read The Women, which I also read this month. They are written very differently and from different points of view, of course, but they have a lot of the same sentiment and feeling, but they're written differently and from a man and a woman's perspective. So yeah, I mean, this has more of like the man's actual experience in the Vietnam War, and the other one talks about, well, this does talk about like what happens after the war and stuff too, but that was more about like the families who are affected and like all of that stuff. So yeah, I read this. I thought it was really good. 4.5 stars. I don't know what else to say about it, but it was really good, and I enjoyed it very much. I didn't know if I would because it is like a war book, but I like science fiction war, so I guess I like real war too. Okay, next I finished the book Ledge. This is by Stacey McEwan. This is a fantasy novel about a girl who basically like lives on this ledge, and they're like sacrifices for this race called the Glacians. And the Glacians come like once every 6 months and steal some people, and they don't know what happens to them. So basically like she gets stolen over to the Glacians, and then her story kind of starts there. And she like makes a alliance with a half Glacian, half human person. And yeah, they have an alliance and like a romance, and the ending was really shocking. I rated this only 3 stars. I didn't think it was like the best thing ever written, but I did enjoy it. I finished it. I will read the next one. I do own that. Unless that's terrible, I'll probably finish this because it's just a trilogy. But I was like, wait, what? At the end? So it was pretty, there were some plot twists that I really liked, but it was just a little bit boring. Also, it wasn't boring. I don't know. I want to say it was boring, but it wasn't like boring. It wasn't the worst. I gave it 3 stars, but I was very confused about the, I want to say geology, but that's the map. So like from here all the way to here only took 2 hours to walk. So this is a very small area in my, like in fantasy books. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and like it took them like 5 days to get down here. But I mean, this is like different land and stuff, but still 2 hours, 5 days. I don't know. That confused me a little bit because yeah, but Ledge, read it, thought it was good. It wasn't like mind-blowing or anything I remember. I do think about the ending a lot though, and I get it confused with the book that I read later in the month because they were kind of similar. But the ending really shocked me, and I do want to read the next one because of the ending. Okay, next I finished The Women by Kristin Hannah, 5 stars. I don't know how I could not give this 5 stars, to be honest. It was the women's point of view. It follows a woman who is a nurse in Vietnam, and that is never touched on the things they carried, so it's a completely new perspective. And yeah, it's about this woman who goes to be a nurse, and her family is not happy about it, and how women are treated differently than men, and people thought there were no women in Vietnam, but they were there. And then it's her friendship with them after, and like her emotional problems and her PTSD and everything that happens to her after the war as well, and like how she healed and how she didn't heal. Very powerful stuff, really good. I mean, the ending, I was like, oh, that's not going to happen. That can't happen. Like, I was thinking about it throughout the book, and then I was like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, no. And then that did happen. So it set it up really well for something for me not to be able to predict. But I mean, it was incredible. If you haven't read it, I would read it. I am very excited to read other things by Kristin Hannah. I have The Nightingale, but have not read that yet. It's on my 25 and 25, so I will be getting to it this year, but incredible book. Okay, the next book I finished was one from this baby. This is my Jane Austen complete works of Jane Austen. I also did listen to the audiobook for this some too, and very, very good. So highly would recommend if you're like intimidated by the length. I think it's like 440 pages. It's not, or 470, I don't know. It's not like the longest book ever, but it is like a lot of content. So I did listen to that on audio. I did like an immersive read for this kind of, because I really wanted to read this book, but like it looks like the Bible pages, like they're thin and they are full and they're small. So I read Pride and Prejudice, and I'd seen the movie before, so I kind of knew the story, but it was very good. I enjoyed it very, very much. I'm very excited to read more Jane Austen novels because I know they're like really, they're classics and really well loved. So I have 5 more left in this baby to read, but this is also free on Audible if you have a subscription to listen to. So I listened to it some, and I also did like an immersive read with this guy. So I believe all of Jane Austen's novels are on Audible, which is great because this would be really difficult to read. I mean, the whole thing, like I can't take this anywhere. You know, this is like a reading in bed at night kind of thing. And the words are so small when I'm tired, you know. So very much enjoyed it. Gave it 4.5 stars. It was a great story. I knew it already. Okay, hi. So, a few days later now, because my phone that I film on just shut off while I was filming the last part, and I thought it didn't record at all. And so I got frustrated and was like, I'll do this later. And then I go and look, and it did record quite a bit of that. So we only have to talk about 2 more books. I think I left off talking about Pride and Prejudice and how much I liked it. I'd seen the movie before, etc. And I was just gonna continue rambling, but I will not now. So the next book that I read was Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. This is a very popular fantasy duology. I don't know if it counts as romantasy. I don't know. I feel like it's mostly fantasy plot. There is some romance, but it's not like, I don't know. It's like enemies to lovers. We'll see what happens. Kind of love triangle. But yeah, so I liked that book a lot. I think I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't like the most amazing thing that I ever read, but it was really good. Like I liked it a lot. So 4 stars. I don't mind a love triangle in a book. I know that some people do not like that, but I don't mind at all. So I really liked it, and 4 stars, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading the second book, which is, it's not The Crimson Moth, because that's the name of the duology. Rebel Witch. Yep. I'm looking forward to reading that. There's a very definitely like interesting cliffhangery end, so I'm looking forward to reading the next one. The last book that I read in the month of February was Stephen King, Billy Summers, No Notes. This was fantastic. This was so good. It might be my favorite book that I've read this year. It's a mystery thriller, I would say. Kind of thrillery. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's about a assassin who wants to retire and takes one last job, which is supposed to be a really big payout, but it's obviously a little sketch because it's like a $2 million payout if he completes the job, but the most he's ever received is $70,000. So this is like a huge jump. And so it's basically the story of the hit and then what happens after the hit, and like some cast of characters along the way that he picks up. Really a lot of like found family, which I really like. Very small found family, but still found family. And the ending was really good, and I really liked how it was executed. So it's kind of like you get like 2 endings kind of in this book, which I really, really liked. So I would highly, highly recommend reading this. I don't know why people don't talk about it. I think it's so good. And I was so intrigued the entire time. So yeah, I really liked it. And this also, I think I was going to mention the things they carried again. But this was mentioned in this book. The things they carried was mentioned in this book, which is very Stephen King to do, because the main character is an Iraq war veteran. So it has some of his like Iraq stories in there too, as well as like his life throughout his life. Basically, it's like him writing his life story throughout the book, which I like reading about writers. I don't know. He wasn't really a writer. Anyway, doesn't matter. But this was fantastic. Highly, highly recommend. 5 stars, obviously, like 6 stars. This was incredible. I highly recommend that every single person read this book. Yeah. I thought it was really good. And it is pretty long. It's like 500 plus pages. Yeah, a little over 500 pages. It's 515 or something. 514. But I didn't feel like it was too long. Like, it was just so good. It was just so good. Okay, so in the month of February, I did read 6 books and DNF'd 1. So just to recap, because I don't know what I put in the last video, was I DNF'd Collide at page 274. Just stopped caring about the characters. I also read The Things They Carried. I read, which I gave 4.5 stars, I think. 4 or 4.5. Ledge, which I gave 3 stars. The Women, which I gave 5 stars. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which I gave 4.5 stars. Heartless Hunter, which I gave 4 stars. And Billy Summers, which I gave 5 stars. So very good reading month. We didn't really have we had the dud of Collide, but that kind of was, this was a rollover from January, so I don't know if I count it like that. I didn't read that much more of it in February. Well, I guess I don't know. I struggled with this, but that's all aside. The lowest rated book otherwise was 3 stars and everything else was 4 or above. So I think the average was like 4.33 or something like that if I don't count the DNF. I think I gave the book 2 stars on Goodreads because I did finish enough of Collide to feel like I could rate it. Like I finished at least 66% of it. So I got 2/3 of the way through and just didn't care about finishing. So I stopped. But, I think that's enough to decide on a rating. Like I just didn't care about the characters and I didn't care about like whatever plot twist was coming. So yeah, that is what I read in the month of February. I will also be posting a video with my reading journal separately, and I will see you guys in my next one. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. Bye.